everybody. I'm just checking if people can hear me. If you can just let me know in the chat, that would be great. Great, thanks. So I'll give a couple of minutes just to let people arrive, and then we can get going. And I'll let everybody know, but I uploaded a file to the PDF section here, the files section. You can download that at your own leisure. It's a resource for you, so you can take that away and maybe use it as a way to prompt if you want in the future. But I'll say that again at the end of the talk. Hi, Sally. Oh, I haven't started talking. That's probably why you can't hear me. I'll just give it a couple more minutes and then we'll get going. And I have quite a few notes, so if I look in that direction, that's as well as another computer slideshow on it, so I'm not looking down here. Okay, get going so that we aren't waiting too long, and then hopefully people will join as the just in the next few moments. I'll just do a bit of introduction as well. My name is Rebecca Warner-Hodgkin. I am a body psychotherapist living in Glasgow. And the talk that I'm giving this afternoon is called Building Resilience in Tough Times. And if you can see the screenshot of the slideshow there, it's the first slide is there. And so what we're doing in this session is we're going to explore ways that we can look after ourselves physically, emotionally, mentally, and I would even say spiritually. In the long run, if that speaks to you, obviously, you can leave that to one side if it doesn't. And to look after ourselves in difficult times. So the three areas that we're going to look at today, one is going to be about learning to listen to the body. Can we listen to the signals that our body is giving us to tell us when we are stressed and overwhelmed in certain situations? I've just seen a question, Sally. The slideshow is just in slides at the bottom. So if you see that on your banner on the side. And the second section we're going to look at is boundaries, is building boundaries. How do we do that? What does it even mean to have boundaries? What does that word in and of itself mean? And then we're going to look at how we can resource ourselves in these, what I've termed tough times, so that we are always building resilience within ourselves so that we can last in the long run. For the purposes of this talk, find resilience in quite a specific way. It has a couple of definitions, and the term is used quite often in scientific ways as well. So I've defined it sort of for the purposes of this basic definition, but also for what we're doing. And I think of resilience as the ability to withstand a significant amount of external pressure and stressors over an extended period of time, and that we can come out of that period of time either same, so as we were in it, or in some way positively changed and strengthened. And so that even in tough times, we can use these as opportunities to learn more about ourselves and to develop and grow and strengthen. So so that's a sort of broad overview of what we're going to do, and the reason that resilience is so useful for us, and why why the areas that I focused on is that I want to give you ways practical ways to avoid burnout, and to find work-life balance, and to just, yeah, as I said, to look after your emotional, mental, and physical well-being, so that we can do this work in the long term, whatever that looks like for you. So as I said, my name's Rebecca. I have been training and as a psychotherapist for the last 6 years, and working for the last 2 years. So I'm what they call an advanced trainee psychotherapist, and I have a small private practice in Glasgow, which I work in. I trained at the Cambridge Body Psychotherapy Centre. Oh, there we go. So I trained at the Cambridge Body Psychotherapy Centre. And I started that in 2014, so that was a while ago now, and yeah, it's been a really big part of my life. So and being able to set up clients, and have clients, and to now be able to volunteer with Indigo is really important to me. I'm really committed to working in the mental health community and on these issues. So it was possible to do a talk at this point in time without mentioning COVID-19 and the effect that that's having on all of us, and what it's like to live in lockdown or in quarantine. And so that the talk kind of takes that into consideration as well. And but broadly speaking, it's also the areas that we'll talk about can be put into use in any kind of stressful situation, whether that's your day job, if you are working out in refugee camps or volunteering out there, or if you are, like me, a mental health professional, or in any stressful situation. If you just have a busy day job, then all of this is applicable. Yeah, all of this is applicable. Take what you need from it, apply it to whatever area of life it feels most relevant. And I'm just really, really glad to have you all join me today. It's a rather strange virtual setting, because it is quite odd giving a presentation with in front of me. So thank you for being here. So before we move on, so moving on, and I'll just get the next slide. Oh no, that was the next slide. So first of all, take it back a step, sorry. The reason it's called listening to the body is because we have, this is to do the only scientific part of this presentation, just to bear in mind. when we are under significant amount of stress, our body to tell us often is what we've discovered. And the bit of the body that is doing that is the autonomic nervous system. Now, the body has a central nervous system and a peripheral nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system is part of that peripheral nervous system. And it controls all involuntary physiological aspects of us. And that's like digestion. So basically nothing that, nothing that we have control over by the ANS is what's referred to. And it has two branches. It has a sympathetic side and a parasympathetic side. And these two branches are always working in tandem. So if the sympathetic gets really activated, the parasympathetic will kick in to lower it down. So they're trying to create balance in our body. In my work, this is really important because when I work with people who are very traumatized or have PTSD or just have had really difficult life experiences, often we find that their sympathetic nervous system is very activated. So they're in and we know that that part of the body controls our fight and flight response. And so it's much harder for people generally to get into their parasympathetic, which is the part that deals with relaxation or sitting down. And most people, particularly on a sort of day-to-day basis, are charging through in the sympathetic. We need that. We need to be able to react and do and get and conclude things, and finish our tasks. Sometimes under a great deal of stress or pressure. But what we also need to be able to do is come down the other side and rest. And doing that creates a balance within the body, which allows it to recover and recuperate. So the reason why the ANS is important for what we're going to talk about today is because a lot of the things that come up when we're feeling anxious or stressed or under pressure, a lot of bodily sensations that we experience are a product of the ANS. So it's these involuntary things that we don't know. So just sorry about just getting my notes together. Here we go. So for the purposes of this, for this section, what I want us to do is think about our bodies as a bucket. And we are a bucket that gets full up every day of lots of different things, lots of different stressors, whether it's basic stuff like getting the kids to school or getting that paper in on time or meeting a meeting deadline. There's lots of different things that come our way through the day, and without it kind of slipping into really big extensive stuff that can make us feel quite overwhelmed and quite overwrought when we're living like that in a constant way. And the more, as I said, the more stress we get, the more the bucket fills. And if we allow it to get so full that it overflows, we would start to feel things in our bodies. So a good way to think about it is to think about times when you have felt very jumpy or edgy, hot. Maybe when you get stressed, you get really hot, or you might get really clumsy and start. You feel like you bash yourself on things. You might get a pit in your stomach, and you might notice that you have behaviors that crop up when you are very stressed, and that can include things like fidgeting or tapping your foot, or maybe you pace a lot to try and all of that behavior and all of those sensations are the body's way of trying to find to lower the stress levels within us. So I like to think of our sensations or our physical sensations as our friends, because they let us know what's happening. They let us know that the body is kind of overworking right now, and sometimes that is okay. But sometimes we need to sort of stop and check in with that and see if we really can go any further. So what I want to do, I didn't say this at the beginning, and I did mean, I'm really sorry, but this session's a little bit interactive. There will be things that I will ask you to do, and obviously I can't see you, so I don't know if you're going to do them. So please try them as much as you feel comfortable, and obviously if you can't for whatever reason, it's absolutely fine. But we're going to do a little exercise right now to see if we can tap into some of those sensations. And so I'm going to, so the exercise comes from this rather, it's on the PDF, this well-known book. It's called The Body Remembers. And it's a really invasive way of that we work with clients to get them to get in touch with their physical sensations. And it's a way that I have found for myself, if I'm feeling really stressed, to check in and figure out what's going on. So the first thing that I ask is that you don't move. So whatever position you're sat in or standing, wherever you are, just stay where you are. And what I'd like you to do is notice that position. And see if you have a look down at the way you're sitting, and the way, if your legs are crossed, or maybe you're only sitting on half a chair. And give yourself a time to think about what sensations you might be becoming aware of. Scan your whole body, start from the head, go through the neck, the chest, back, stomach, legs, feet, arms and hands, and just see if you can tap into each area of your body to see if there's anything going on in any of them. I can tell that because I'm quite nervous, my chest is quite tight, for instance. And just something for you to know right now, are you comfortable? Don't move. Just see, are you comfortable in the seat that you're sitting in? How would you know if you're comfortable? What sensations might you feel that might indicate comfort or discomfort? And do you have an impulse to change your position? Don't do it. Just notice if there is a desire in you to move. Where does it come from? Is it a particular part of the body that wants to move? And if you change your position right now, which bit would you move first? Don't do it yet, though. Just follow the impulse back. So if it's in your neck, focus on your neck. Maybe it feels cold. Maybe your right foot has gone a bit dead. So stay with that sensation and follow the impulse and move. Change positions. Maybe it's just an uncrossing of the legs. Maybe it's just a shifting slightly across the chair. Notice if you can breathe more easily, or if you have a pain somewhere, or do you feel alert? But maybe you don't want to change. Maybe you're comfortable. So what bodily cues, what signals or sensations are letting you know that you're comfortable? Maybe you're just the right temperature, or your back just feels that perfect level of support, and you're breathing deeply. So now, regardless of whether you're comfortable or uncomfortable, I'd like you to move. And even if you did before, I'd like you to move again. Maybe you want to stand up and then sit down, or change your position. I'm going to move myself now as well, because I thought, oh, I'm uncomfortable too. We just 20 seconds to bodily sense. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's just finding out a little bit of information about ourselves. And notice you're more alert now that you moved. We're more comfortable, more relaxed. And just see if you can settle into where you are now before we move on. And if you do have on your paper, or even you're on your, I don't know why I said that, you know, just if you want to of anything that came up, you know, so that you get to it. And I'll give you time to do that before we move on. And that simple exercise is a way of learning about what sensations you have when you're comfortable or uncomfortable. And that's just I'm sitting in a chair. But what about if you're in a really stressful situation and every time you go into work, you get a knot in your stomach, and maybe the first month you don't notice it, but eventually, you know, that's going to have a long-term impact on you. And so being able to kind of tap into our bodies and listen to what it's telling us can help us to take action. And that's not to say that you're that you can change things overnight, but you can start looking at, what does my life look like? What is it about, you know, when I go to work that keeps giving me this knot in my stomach? I can give you an example from my own life. I need a lot of time, and I don't go to work anymore because we're all in lockdown. But when I used to go to work, I noticed over the last couple of years that I need longer and longer in the morning, and that if I don't give myself that, I'm extremely frazzled and I get extremely stressed, and I get in my stomach, and it's kind of, it took a long time for me to recognize that I couldn't just get up anymore and just rush out the door with a cup of coffee in my hand and get to work and be fine. That taking things more slowly and allowing my body to wake up in a more natural way really allowed me to then connect better with my colleagues, have a more efficient day. And I have to remind myself of that. I forget, that's what mostly I remember, but I do, have those days where it just happens for whatever reason. And I'll go in and go, oh, and I feel awful, physically awful. And I'll be like, okay, I know what happened here. I need to go back. I need to make sure that this doesn't happen again. So, so now that we are finishing with that section, one of the things that I want to talk about, I think will help us stay sort of in difficult circumstances or dealing with tough times and building that internal resilience for ourselves over time, is our capacity to be able to build boundaries for ourselves in our work life, in our personal lives, in our relationships. One of the big things that I talk about in my work or in my training that we are very aware of is this idea that we are sorry, I just saw Greta saying about the crackliness of my headphones. Sorry, I've taken them off, so do let me know if there's any issues with the sound now. So hopefully that's better. So talking about boundaries, I work with the idea with my clients that we are separate individuals, obviously, but there is also a level at which we are connected and interconnected. And this can be quite a difficult paradox, I think, to hold, because we know we are our own people, but we also have a level at which we need to recognize each other as humans and similar in order to be able to relate. So how can we still be present for other people and be present for ourselves and take care of ourselves so that we're not losing ourselves in other people's stories, lives, and not holding on to, and still being able to hold on to ourselves and who we are. So, and what does that even mean to talk about a boundary between individuals? I don't think I'd heard about the word boundary until I started my training. And then I found myself in a sort of quite a circle of people who were into yoga and wellness, and people used boundaries all the time. And I put that quote there because Jeff Brown is an author who writes a lot about spirituality, and he's very keen on boundaries. So, and that was the quote that I saw in 2015, and I thought, yes, I could do with better boundaries, but how do I even get them? And like many of us, and I don't mind owning this at all, I grew up as somebody who liked to please people. I would say yes to lots of things. I wanted to do well at school. I wanted to do well in my professional life, and I wanted to contribute. I wanted to contribute to society and be part of things. And so very often I found myself taking on more than I could handle. And I was often exhausted and tired, and the body, as I've said, will find a way to tell you. And I was one of those, and this happens to lots of people I know. You work really hard and you give a lot out, and inevitably you take a holiday and you get sick. That is, I spent years doing that, and being very annoyed by it. And in my training, I discovered, and now in my practice, and in writing this presentation, what I discovered was that this is still a challenging area for me, and I think it's a challenging area for a lot of us. I don't think that it's that difficult, that easy to work out, what we need to say yes to and what we should say no to in our day-to-day lives in order to build resilience. And the reason we need to figure out how to do that and what we should be doing is so that we can last, so that we can go the journey and last the time that we're giving to whatever project or event, or part of it, whether it's a partnership or a relationship. We need to figure out what we need in order to make that to last. And as I said, I believe that developing resilience helps us to strengthen and grow. And so the more we can do that through learning, the more we're able to grow and give more in the end. So there isn't a magic wand, unfortunately. It's a learning process. Boundaries are all about learning who you are in that, in order to, and what you need in order to say no or yes or maybe. So one of my big suggestions, it's not big, sorry. One of my suggestions for learning to build boundaries is saying maybe. So is not necessarily agreeing to everything right away. I'm like everybody. I love to be involved in things. I get asked to do extra things at work, which are interesting and exciting, and present in my group supervision. Can you do this present? And I always am thinking, yeah, I can do that. Whereas really, what I need to do is say, maybe I can do that. Let me get back to you. Let me go and look at my diary. Let me go and look at the amount of other work I have to do, and let me come back to you with an answer. And that to me has been the biggest thing that I could have learned about building boundaries, that it wasn't about, there wasn't a magic trick. It wasn't that suddenly like I developed a better sense of, a better ability to say no. It was just a practice of saying maybe. And it was a practice of saying no as well. Sometimes more than I needed to, in order to have time where I was resting and saying, oh, actually, I could have gone out tonight. That would have been all right. I could have gone and seen that friend. I didn't need to say no to that. And now, and so next time I'll say yes, I'll give it a go. But it's a trial and error sort of way of being, I would say. And I wanted to think about it in that very practical way of, okay, you look at your lives and see where there are areas that you can say, yes or no on this kind of on workload or events. So there's that practical side of boundaries of looking at of what we're actually doing in our life, so that we can balance it and have a work-life balance, rather than just being at all work or feeling like we're being dragged silly around going to all different social events. There's the other side of boundaries, though, which is all about kind of knowing who we are as people, so that we know how we can interact with people. Because boundaries aren't just about what we say no or yes to. They're also about how do we interact with people so that we don't get totally overwhelmed by their story, or feel that they take up all the space in a room. And that does happen. Sometimes people don't know that they're taking up a lot of air, so to speak. And sometimes I see that in a lot of traumatized people, who have big events happen to them, and they really need to share that, and so it kind of spills out, and it takes up a lot of space, and it takes up a lot of air, and it's not very contained. And in hindsight, they might not have wanted to share in that way. So one thing that we can do in order to feel the boundary, and it's a little bit, it's something that you would normally do with another person, but I don't necessarily know your circumstances. So if you do have somebody at home with you in lockdown, you can try this with them later. But how close do you want a person to stand next to you? You can feel it when somebody comes into the room. So our bodies are sensed to be alert to other people, and we all have a different space need. So like in a really physical way, we all have a different space need. And one thing you can try imagining is, or practicing with a partner at home, is if you let them walk towards you, where is the point where you actually want them to stop? Where's the point where they have got too close to you and you feel a bit invaded? And just knowing that on a very kind of physical and visceral level gives you a sense of, yeah, I have space needs, and you can work out from them as well. Like, that can apply to your kind of day-to-day life of how much space do I actually need? Because I'm a bit of an introvert, so I need a lot of space. I need space to kind of just be by myself at home with my cats, or going for a walk in nature, and I just need that. And I'm okay with that. But I also love my friends, and I love spending time with them, and learning that about myself in that kind of very physical way. With, okay, so I actually need you to be about a meter away from me, unless we really know each other well, allows me to kind of be like, okay, that's how I can engage in the world. That's where I am. Interestingly, and I will share this, maybe I already said this, but this was the hardest bit of the session for me to think about and write. And I think it's because it is a difficult thing for me still, to not say yes to too many things, or not let too much into my life. So if you're struggling at all with this in your own life, I really feel for you. I know it's hard, but it's worth it. It's worth just finding out where your limits are so that you can enact them. Because the more you're able to say no, you can say yes and really mean it. You can really mean that yes. Yes, I can definitely do that presentation for you, and I'm going to give it 100%. Yes, I can show up to that Saturday charity event and give it all and be there, because you know how to take care of what you need and how to look after yourself. And that takes us back to that whole thing of this idea that we need to build and strengthen these things inside ourselves so that we can last the distance. So as we move into the next session, I have one more little next section. I have a little exercise, and you can try it. I'm going to do it with you, and you can try it or not try it. It's entirely up to you. What I'd like everybody to do is stand up and stand on one leg, and just stand on one leg, And maybe take a breath. And then put the foot down and stand on the other leg. And take another breath, and then sit down wherever you are. And I hope I wasn't the only person who did that. The reason that that exercise, and I introduced that exercise, is that it completely neutralizes the brain. So it switches everything off. And if you didn't do it, try it at home sometime, because it absolutely just makes everything stop. There's no way you can be worrying about the future or the past when you're stood on one leg. And it really gives you that opportunity to just bring yourself back to neutral, and then think about, okay, what do I need to do next? In moments of deep stress, I recommend standing, just giving yourself a break and standing on one leg. So the kind of final section is how do we continue building boundaries and continue listening to our bodies and look after ourselves in a way that is not just about the work. In psychotherapy, we call the stuff that I've been introducing you to as the work. This is the work we're doing to grow and strengthen and develop as people. But we also know that in order to keep doing that and to keep growing and developing, we need a lot of joy in our lives. Like, we really need to hold on to those moments. And in my I am part of a supervision group, and we talk a lot about resourcing ourselves. What are the moments when we're with a client where they're sharing something really difficult? And I can imagine that is something that, if you're working in refugee camps or volunteering in any of that kind of, doing casework or any of that kind of situation, you hear and see some really difficult things. And in those moments, we need to, it's a boundary issue. We need to remember that that's not happening to us in that moment. And so we can still be with that person who has experienced it, but that we're separate. So that's the boundary. And that there are good things within us and in our lives, and hopefully in that person's life as well, that are kind of anchors that we can hold on to. So in my work, when a client tells me a really, really difficult story or a really difficult experience of something that's happened to them, one of the things that I might do, it's something that we call breaking, is if I can see that they are becoming really overwhelmed, is that I'll ask them, how did you survive that? And what we tend to see is that they will have something like, oh, well, when that was happening, I would remember a time when my family was all together on a beach on a family holiday, and the day was really sunny, and we had ice cream, and it was a really wonderful experience. And so when that was happening, when I was living that terrible experience, I would hold on to that memory. And that's all it is. It's an anchor that gets people through, including us, through really difficult times. And I noticed it a lot, particularly in myself through lockdown, is the big thing that is getting me through only being allowed out 1 hour a day is taking pictures of nature and go. So I have my walk. I go on my long walk, well, my hour-long walk in the nature park next to me, and I take pictures and I bring them home, and I have that memory to hold on to, so that, because there are plenty of days where it's much harder for me to get out because I'm working a full-time job as well as working with clients. That's still there for me. That's still rooting, even though I can't get outside when I want to. That's still there for me, and I can hold on to that. And so I've given you some examples there. And so I really encourage you to find out what your anchor is when you're in really difficult moments. What's the place I mean, I don't want to call it, I guess that's where maybe the expression happy place came from. But what's the place that you go to in you that keeps you feeling, connected to the world around you, connected to reality? Is it a day with, is it, it could be cuddling your partner, it could be playing with your children, it can be whatever, whatever is a source of reassurance and comfort and joy to you. And I encourage you to find moments like that you can hold on to. Now, on top of that, I also shared my cat with you because she and I, well, I have two, but they have been a great resource in that time. I think I might have gone slightly spare without them, although they're not great conversationalists, it has to be said. We also need to move. The body needs to move. It needs to find ways of getting out there, getting outside, or and so of course, all the exercises, running, cycling, yoga, whatever works for you, walking, it doesn't matter. These are all things that we kind of need to build into our daily lives to build health, to build good long-term mental health. And what I want to do is emphasize that for all the movement we do, we need to counter that. The autonomic nervous system needs to counter that with stillness. And I'm not here to tell everybody that they need to meditate, but for me, meditation has been a great resource. And on the PDF, I share the app that I use because I think it's great and it's free. So there's no reason not to. But it's just one way. It's not the way. It's just one way. But I would, reading a book also counts as a moment of stillness, or standing quietly in the sunshine for 5 minutes is a moment of stillness. And the body needs that in order to recuperate and recover, as well as obviously great sleep. If we can get that, then fabulous. But, that's often harder for people than, depending on their own lives. We need to build this all into our life. And that can be challenging. So taking small moments, if you love running, then great. But you also need to counter that with maybe 10 minutes of just gentle walking to give your body that chance to recover and have a moment so that you can check in, because it's I think it's in the slower and more still movements that we are able to really sense what our body is telling us. Obviously, if we get injured doing sport or something, then that's a big signal. But, in the slower moments, we can start to really tap into whether we are tired or whether we just need, whether we're genuinely tired or getting sick, or for instance, or if we just need to go to bed early to have a good night's rest. And so I just put here external versus internal, and that's just to say, it's okay if all the things that bring you joy are external to you, like art or TV, film, or whatever cultural thing that you love. That's fine. It's just making sure that you do that, you explore that, be curious about what it is, so that you have these resources to hand through these difficult times. And whatever they look like. So I have managed to keep to my 40-minute time. I'm just going to conclude and wrap up. And if there are any questions or anything, then obviously please do ask. So going back to what I was saying at the beginning is that there are these areas that within. Sorry, let me start again. Let me have a drink of water. As I said at the beginning, how we can look after ourselves mentally, emotionally, and physically during a lockdown, during being a volunteer in a refugee camp, doing a really difficult, stressful office job, is by really listening to ourselves. It's knowing ourselves, listening into our bodies, what they're telling us, and it's checking in, is using them as signals to as signals to really connect with what's going on. And we're doing that so that we can preemptively step in and make decisions around what is good for us. And that could mean that we are going to it can be really basic. It can be saying, oh, no, I can't take this extra task on at work. Or it could be as simple as saying, oh, as recognizing, oh, I'm actually getting really ill. So I need to step back and look after myself for a week, and taking a week off work if that's possible. To the really simple things of just starting to say no to some social events. That seems unlikely right now because we're obviously in lockdown, and there aren't any social events really. But even I've noticed that I can't do too many. For instance, I can't do too many Zoom calls. I can't be on Teams and Zooms all day and then do a social Zoom thing in the evening. And partly it's the screen, I think, but also like it's that it just takes a lot out of you. And my colleagues have been saying the same thing. So we really need to check in with ourselves so that we can keep going, so that we can keep turning up for the communities that we want to serve, the people we love, for our friends. Yes, lots of people, Sally, do want to Zoom. I know. So I say yes to what I mean, at work, I have to say yes. So I limit what I do socially, basically. And that's, that can be challenging, but actually it's important, for me to look after my health, because my clients need me right now more than ever. So if I'm not well, then, it's not a disaster, but it's not great for them. And so we just need to make sure that we are able to show up in the way that we need to for the long term. And each of us will have a different way of doing that. And it's figuring that out. So I really hope that I've been able to give you some practical tips, some useful ways of exploring and learning more about what your body might be telling you, how to stop your own bucket from overflowing, and connecting to the things that bring you joy, so that in difficult moments you have access to them. I really thank you all for joining me this afternoon. It's been I feel really privileged to be able to share this work with you that I do, and I hope that it's helpful in some way. And of course, I'm here to answer any questions. And on the PDF that I shared, my email is there as well. If anybody has a question that they want to ask privately, it's absolutely fine. But thank you so much. Oh, thank you, Megan. I'm so glad it was useful. Oh, thank you, Natalia. Thank you. Okay. Oh. So the PDF now is there, guys. Sorry, I hadn't shared it properly, but please do download it at your own leisure. And as I say, any questions or emails, please feel free to send them to me. Thank you so much for coming. And thank you for your lovely feedback. Any feedback as well, that's good or bad, I'm happy to take it as well if you need to email me. Thank you, Megan and Greta, for organizing everything. Okay, there's no questions, so I'm going to end the event, but thanks so much, everybody.